Right, so we discuss a lot of independent wrestling here on the channel, more specifically a lot of bad independent wrestling that makes you want to rip your eyeballs out, independent wrestling matches that are just horrible, and independent wrestling matches that sometimes turn into real fights and real shoots, and sometimes for that reason makes them a very interesting watch. So I thought I'd come back and do another video discussing more of some of the worst independent wrestling matches of all time. I've done one of these videos before, you can check it out, links down below. We talked about the Ultimate Warrior and Priscilla Kelly and the former Manu from WWE, who you totally remember. But we were only scratching the surface there is even more to talk about, more terrible indie wrestling matches that we are going to discuss in today's video here. So like the video and let's get straight into it, as this first one is one that you very much might remember hearing about, that being Ric Flair's final match. Now, Ric Flair has, of course, had a few final matches. The one against Shawn Michaels springs to mind. He also faced Sting in what was billed as his final match in 2013 for TNA. And then nearly a decade later, he would decide to come back for yet another match, and this one so far has indeed been his final match. As of now, he could very well wrestle again soon. And yeah, when this initially got announced in 2022, the response to this was exactly as you'd expect. People thought Ric Flair just needed to be stopped. Who was allowing this to happen? But regardless, it was happening, and after 3 years I'm finally watching this for the first time, as I never checked this out, as this is Ric Flair's final match, which took place on an independent show in Nashville, Tennessee, which seemed to get a really good sellout and had a good packed house here. And they're doing the show under the Jim Crockett Promotions banner, like that is the name of the promotion they're doing this on, so that is very interesting, very cool to see Jim Crockett Promotions technically making a return here. And yeah, this took place on the 31st of July 2022, and is Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett up against Andrade and the Nature Boy himself. Of course, all three of these guys are linked to the Nature Boy in their own way. Jeff Jarrett and Ric Flair go way back. Jay Lethal and Ric Flair go back to their TNA days and the infamous woo-off. And Andrade has an obvious link to Ric Flair as well at this time too, as Flair and Jarrett do kick this one off, but nothing happens before Lethal is tagged in, and they get working. They do some headlock takeovers, which gets the crowd on their feet, chanting "You still got it" at Rick. But very obviously, there is very minimal bumping for Ric Flair in this one, and there's a lot of gamesmanship and taunt spamming throughout this match, as Andrade gets tagged in and himself and Lethal obviously start having an actual match, and it's some pretty good stuff. Same with Jarrett and Andrade. And then obviously when Ric Flair gets involved, it slows right down and they're just back to spamming taunts and doing crowd interactions and walking around the ring and ringside area, as Jeff Jarrett looks as though he's gonna walk out of the match, and Ric Flair just looks exhausted in the ring at this point, as they waste a lot of time teasing this, clearly just to give Ric Flair a rest here. They finally get back in and Flair is doing his chops and straights. It's all he's really doing, but you know, it's his signature Flair offense, vintage Ric Flair. It's cool to see. It breaks down with all four of them in the ring as Flair does some more chops and he gets a figure four locked in on Jay Lethal before it's broken up. Then Jeff Jarrett uses Karen Jarrett's high heel shoe on Ric Flair's head, and there's chaos at the ringside area, as I believe it's Ric Flair's daughter who is getting into it with Karen Jarrett as she screams she's gonna effing kill her. That was hilarious. And Flair is actually busted open from that shoe shot, by the way, and is just gushing. This match truly has it all. It is ticking off every box from Ric Flair so far. They're getting everything in there. Flair is then suplexed by Jay Lethal in the biggest moment of this match, and easily Ric Flair's biggest bump of this match, and biggest bump in probably the last 20 years for him. And I was very shocked to see that, as Jarrett then gets Ric Flair in the figure four, but it's broken up as the heels just continue bullying this helpless old man before Andrade finally gets the hot tag and cleans house, but there's a ref bump, and as Flair gets the pin, there's nobody to count it. Jeff Jarrett looks to use the guitar on Ric Flair, but Ric Flair ends up using brass knuckles on him. The ref comes out, Flair gets the figure four on as it's a figure four pinfall, and it just kind of looks like he's dead, but that's the win. He gets the 1, 2, 3 there, and I think I enjoyed that way more than I should have. That went 26 minutes, it was a total overbooked mess, and they tried to cram in every Ric Flair trope and all vintage Ric Flair and greatest hits of him in this match, whilst also trying to work around the obvious issue that he's an old man who can barely move and gets gassed after the slightest bit of movement. There's lots of rest spots, there's taunt spamming, and long stretches where nothing is really happening as they're just allowing Ric Flair to get a breather, but the crowd loved this one, and there was some cool moments. Ric Flair getting busted open, taking a suplex, and Andrade was obviously the MVP of this match and actually did some decent work, but I do understand why people thought this was very much a dud. It was 26 minutes, and maybe about 8 minutes of it was actual wrestling. It wasn't pretty, it shouldn't have happened, but for what it was, I don't think it was that bad, and maybe I can do a full show review of this entire event, because from what I've heard, the entire event isn't too pretty. So leave a like if you want to see that, maybe 1,000 likes, and I'll do a full show review of the entire event for Ric Flair's final match. But yeah, that match was definitely a bit of a clown show, and speaking of clown shows, we go over to Wrestle Circus, who were a very infamous independent wrestling company that existed throughout the late 2010s, as this match took place on a Wrestle Circus show that was dedicated to Cody Rhodes on the 5th of August 2017, and it's between Rachel Ellering and Christy Janes, and this match just has a total breakdown in communication, and it's one of the most awkward things I've ever seen. As at a certain point they both just stop selling each other, trying to work, and eventually just stop wrestling all in all and go straight to the finish in a very, very awkward match.
Consecutive wins under their belts. They met back on February the 19th. Rachel Ellering capturing the Lady of the Ring title. After that matchup, Christy decided to kind of shake things up a little bit and headed over to Japan for a bit, did some training over there, and said that she really expanded her horizons and her wrestling repertoire. And the cover here by Christy. Rachel gets the shoulder up, and Christy Janes looked like she was trying to cloverleaf. Again, Rachel perhaps the more experienced grappler of the two, and a former competitive weightlifter. Christy going for the suplex there, and you couldn't pull Rachel over, and again trying to pull her down to the mat. Way to try to get inside Rachel Ellering's head. You can see that Rachel's trying to slow things down and trying to grind things out. Christy trying to showboat right there. Never does get Rachel down to the mat, and right there finally on the arm drag sends her across the ring, but oh, high knee. That running senton by Ellering. Down for the cover for the #1 contendership. No. I'm going to tell you what, friends, load them up, because this is as close to a shoot as you are going to see. Oh! Ellering going for the big kick. Did she not get enough? Christy seemingly stepped back at the last second. Janes with the forearm. Uh-oh. Rachel, oh, hold on. Up and over. Christy Janes puts it away.
You can see Rachel Ellering no-sell and walk away after the finish, making it very clear to the fans what they had just witnessed. Wrestle Circus themselves would also kind of address this match on Twitter in now deleted tweets, saying, "A poor booking decision on my part. Not falling on the sword here, but Ellering and Janes are both major talents. We put two workers in the ring to tell a story, and all three sides had different opinions on how it should go down. Communication breakdown is our bad. Wrestle Circus would go defunct in 2019, and they're another promotion that could be worth doing a full video on. Rachel Ellering versus Christy James is definitely one of the most infamous shoot wrestling independent matches out there, and another one is this match here that took place in Japan between Dirtbike Kid and Great Sasuke. More specifically, this took place on Michinoku Pro in Japan in 1999, and there was a tournament underway on this show as it was a specifically masked wrestlers tournament. Dirtbike Kid is one of the participants in one of these matches in the tournament. He's a BritRes worker who was trained by Sabu, and he was mostly known at this point for some jobber appearances he did for ECW a couple of times. But he's about to have his most famous match of all time as he's up against the Great Sasuke, who was a stalwart and a titan of Japanese professional wrestling, and no less the owner of Michinoku Pro, the company who are running this show. And yeah, this match just goes to pot instantly as the Dirtbike Kid unmasks himself the moment the match begins and destroys the concept of the tournament as it's meant to be a masked wrestlers tournament. Apparently Dirtbike Kid was annoyed at the length of the match, as rumors say the match was shortened from 6 minutes to 2 minutes right before they went out, and apparently he just wasn't a fan of the mask gimmick in general for the tournament, as he himself wasn't a masked wrestler and he thought the mask was stupid. So in an act of protest for all these issues, he unmasked himself instantly right as the match began, and yeah man, a really smart and great idea to do that right at the start of a match against the owner of the company who's booked you and paid you to be here and is now probably gonna kick your ass. And boy did he ever.
にまつわるようなテクニック出てくるんでしょうか。まもなく記念すべきオープニングマッチです。はい。さあもう一回ダイブしていきましたが、これは自爆してしまいました。ミドルキック、そしてソバット、そしてもう一発いきます。もう一回浮き上げていきました。この辺はもう矢継ぎ早に飛ばしていきます。もう一回ソバット。おっと戦闘不能になったか。しばらく動きが止まりました。
潰しにかかってますね。
ダードファイク、もう一回いきます。
いや起き上がってこないもんでですね、ちょっと蹴ろうかなと思ってたんですがね。
なるほど、結構でも入りましたよね今ね。おっとフロントからのネックロックで、これタップか。タップしてしまいました。
Yeah, the match lasted all of 2 minutes. It's just 2 minutes straight of his getting kicked in by the Great Sasuke. One of the most infamous wrestling shoot incidents, and Dirtbike Kid only went on to wrestle once more after this. Who knows if this incident played a part in that at all. But yeah, as I said, this goes down as the Dirtbike Kid's most famous and also most infamous match he had in his entire career, as it's all he's really known for nowadays is this shoot incident match he had with the Great Sasuke in Japan, where he unmasked himself the moment the match began. Just one of the dumbest decisions I've seen a wrestler make, and wrestlers are very, very dumb, especially British ones. And hey, speaking of dumb British wrestling, I'm getting really good at these segues. A question that I was asked in my last video, when I mentioned that I actually go to indie shows and I've been to many in my life, was what is the worst indie match you have seen live or just seen yourself? And for the most part, I've not really seen any matches that I thought were very bad. A lot of stuff is just standard for the independent scene. I don't exactly go to indie shows expecting to see amazing 5-star worked spectacle matches. I've seen some very good matches. I've seen some matches that are average, but there's only one match that truly left me kind of feeling insulted and I really thought was just genuine dogsh, as this was a match that took place at the Progress Wrestling show that happened in Manchester on the 12th of November 2023 that I was in attendance for. This show was called Wonder Brawl, and for the most part a lot of matches on here were pretty solid and I did enjoy this show overall. It's just one match that left a very sour taste in my mouth, that match being the match that took place between Matthew Raywalt and Charles Crowley, which was titled the most dramatic match in pro wrestling history. Matthew Raywalt is a TNA commentator. He's done some in-ring work for them as well. You might remember him as Aiden English from the Vaudevillains or Rusev Day in WWE, and Charles Crowley is a guy here on the British scene. Two guys that I do actually really like. I enjoy both of these guys' work, just not this match here. I don't have full footage of this match, that's why I'm just doing a quick little tidbit here, but I did find this clip they posted themselves on Twitter, that being Progress, that didn't get a good response whatsoever, that shows why I really did not enjoy this match. Yeah, who knows what is even going on at that point. The match itself, like I said, is called the most dramatic match in pro wrestling history, and the entire match they just spent parodying wrestling, and it became a parody of a parody, and it's just the kind of stuff I don't really enjoy in wrestling when they try to parody itself. And yeah, like I said, this did not get a good response on Twitter whatsoever. People thought this just looked kind of stupid, and I am inclined to agree. This is easily the worst indie wrestling match that I have personally seen myself live in person. But yeah, that's a question for you guys. Leave down below in the comments, what is the worst indie wrestling match that you have seen live in person? And maybe if there's any footage of that match, I can check it out in a future video and see if you are telling the truth on it. But yeah guys, that's all about I've Got Time here today, talking about more of some of the worst independent wrestling matches that are out there. Like this video if you did enjoy it, and comment down below any suggestions you might have. And also, like I said, what is the worst indie wrestling match that you have seen live? I would love to know. Subscribe with those notifications on so you never miss a video on the Top 10 Wrestling channel, and I will see you all in the next video. So goodbye and keep on rolling.